Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Fallen London. Today we're going to be having a look at October's exceptional story, The Children of the Glow. As always, at the start of a new exceptional story, I encourage you to play these yourselves, spoilers ahead, become an exceptional friend, support Failbetter, get access to these stories, and a variety of other benefits, including more actions, and a bigger deck, and access to the House of Chimes. There's also this enhanced membership now that I personally don't have, but I know it gives you access to old exceptional stories and allows you to reset them so many times a month. It may be 2 times a month. Don't take my word for that, but it seems like a very interesting thing. But it looks like this is where we need to go, the After Hours Butcher Shop. It is a pleasant evening for a late night stroll in Vale Garden. But upon taking a turn down Hollow Street, you notice something odd. While most of the shop windows along the row are dark, as one would expect, it being well after closing time, one remains brightly illuminated, its light spilling out onto the footpath ahead of you. Closer inspection reveals it to be a butcher's shop, and while its interior is lit, it is empty. Behind the glass pane of the door, where a closed sign would normally hang, a sign reads, "The Children of the Glow welcome all intrepid art lovers." We've got 2 options. We can enter the shop. Perhaps you are an art lover, perhaps not. In any case, the salient word on the sign is welcome. No? Or not tonight. You set out this evening to stretch your legs, not to buy a leg of mutton. Let's enter the shop. We like art. We've seen many a crazy art here. The shop bell tinkles as you pull open the door, but nobody comes to greet you. Instead, you are met by another large sign affixed to the door at the back of the shop, where ordinarily it might have said "No admittance, employees only." In this case, it says "Enter if you dare." Having already dared to enter an eerily deserted butcher's premises late at night, it would be inconsistent not to stay the course. You open the door and step through into the back of the shop. The back room of the butcher's shop has been transformed. Usually the domain of burly butcher's assistants, it now hosts a gathering of expensively dressed society people. Unlike the front room, this much larger room is dimly lit, with only the occasional gas lamp. "Such an original idea!" you overhear a mustachioed young man exclaim to his neighbour by the door. "To hold an art exhibition in a butcher's shop and bring art to the people like this, quite radical. Wouldn't you agree?" You cast your eyes around the room. Along the walls hang large meat hooks, but instead of animal carcasses, they bear the weight of ostentatiously framed paintings. At the far end of the room, along the back wall, is a large cutting block bearing a punch bowl and silver trays, with the remains of delicate canapes. The room's centerpiece, meanwhile, appears to be a sculpture, but it is obscured behind a small crowd. So we have a few options. We can view the art on the west wall. Against this wall hangs long, wide paintings of tubular objects. We can view the sculpture in the center of the room. Above the heads of the sculpture's admirers, you make out 2 pointed ears. How intriguing! Or we can view the painting on the east wall. A full-length portrait hangs against the wall. I really like the artwork for this exceptional story, by the way. I think it's fantastic. It's this right here. Let's view the art on the west wall. The painting is a still life that compromises a selection of edible tubers and roots arrayed along a wooden table. Your eye is caught by a parsnip arranged between 2 turnips. They seem unnaturally vibrant, the root vegetables. Perhaps a trick of the light? A woman in a vermilion velvet cloak is staring at the vegetables with an intelligent frown. The use of illumination here has a certain continental quality, wouldn't you say? And one must admire the way the artist invites us to re-examine the notion of stillness. Why, yes indeed, replies the young lady beside her. I quite agree. I have art appreciation. Sure. Let's view the sculpture in the middle of the room. You wander toward the center of the room and insert yourself into a crowd of viewers. Mounted on a plinth is a small sculpture of a horse rearing on its hind legs. Swirls of white paint on the horse's coppery mane appear to glimmer and flicker in the dim light. "Mama, the pony's on fire!" a small girl exclaims. Her mother hushes her and yanks her away by the arm. We gain some romantic notions and another art appreciation. But let's have a look at the painting on the east wall. The portrait shows a tall young lady dressed in flowing white muslin in the manner of a pastoral nymph. The moon behind her head appears to glow, invoking the halo of an angel. The man standing beside you, sporting a red paisley cravat, is appraising the painting through a long net. The light in this piece is quite evocative, I think. One is almost reminded of exotic southern climes. Savage, unreachable. Yes, no doubt this work illustrates the unknowable integrity of feminine hysteria. A younger man wearing an orange paisley cravat nods in agreement. I rather think so. Couldn't agree more. We gained a dubious testimony and another art appreciation. Well, we've seen everything there is to see here. Let's leave the butcher's shop. You turn to leave the makeshift gallery, but upon doing so you find yourself facing a grey-bearded man. He is looking at you curiously. Beg your pardon, but I wonder if I might have your thoughts on the art you've seen here this evening. You've been asked your opinion on the works on display in the butcher's shop art exhibition. We can respond with an elaborate analysis. The lady in the velvet cloak and the man in the red paisley cravat seemed confident in their opinions. We can speak frankly. You have no patience for the pseudo-ish waffle. An uncomplicated, unadorned description of the artwork is what's called for here. Or say you have no idea. Fine art is not your area of expertise, and you are not about to pretend that it is. Let's speak frankly. This exhibition includes a sculpture of a horse with a glowing mane, a picture of a nymph with glowing hair, and a still life of root vegetables, some of which are glowing. The gentleman cocks his head and regards you with an air of astonishment. My word, how marvellous, he enthuses. Every other art connoisseur I have spoken to this evening has appointed in the most nebulous, obfuscatory manner. But you, madame, have answered me with absolute clarity. It is now clear that this gentleman is none other than Mr. Huffam, newspaper editor of the London's Unexpurgated Gazette. His spirits buoyed, he beams at you, as if you'd lately saved a brace of children from a burning orphanage, and he wishes to congratulate you for it. Of course, some might find your analysis naive and unsophisticated, he continues, but I do not. On the contrary, I find the unadorned nature of your reprisal bold and refreshing, as bold and refreshing as the art itself. Mr. Huffam wants you to write about the butcher's shop art exhibition for the Gazette. Oh no. It is now clear that the gentleman you are discoursing with is none other than Mr. Huffam, newspaper editor of London's Unexpurgated Gazette. He is proposing you write him an article about this radical new art style. Although the pay will not be handsome, he is sure that a connoisseur such as yourself, payment is but a secondary consideration. You do not know me very well, do you? I like money. Right. Accept Mr. Huffam's proposal out of journalistic interest. Not every day one gets asked to write for the Unexpurgated Gazette. We can accept Huffman's proposal out of interest in the subject matter. You are someone with a particular passion for fine art. Or we can accept Mr. Huffman's proposal for a lark. Writing about these art radicals might be amusing, and the extra coin wouldn't go astray either. Let's do it out of interest for the subject matter. Who doesn't like art? Splendid! Huffman claps his hands together. Yes, yes, on my desk as soon as possible, and we'll run it in the next paper. News travels fast, so we must be faster. An exaggerated wink. I hear they meet at a salon. He scribbles an address on a piece of paper. Now, I think Lady H is trying to get my attention. He slips away and is embroiled in another conversation in an eye blink, leaving you with nothing but an address and the assurance that eventually you might get paid. So we've been sent off to an artist's salon to meet the Children of the Glow. The only problem I have with the name The Children of the Glow, it just makes me think of the Children of Atom out of Fallout. The unceasing salon. The address Mr. Huffman gave you leads you to an elegant, fashionably compact townhouse in Elderwick. A butler ushers you into a large drawing room, and through a haze of smoke and blazing gaslight, a woman emerges to greet you. Ah, there you are, she says. The wealthy patroness is a woman in her middle years, her neck, wrists and ears all obscured with a multicoloured tangle of exotic jewels and clay beads. So delighted to have you join us for my humble little salon this evening. You cast your eyes around the room. In spite of its generous proportions, the space feels oppressively congested, having been landscaped with exotic carpets, cushions, curtains, and no fewer than 3 Chinese screens. This muddle of patterns and fabrics renders any distinction between furniture and floor impossible. Contributing to this Bedouin tent-like confusion are a dozen or so bohemians, themselves draped across the furniture, the floor, or both. You are very lucky this evening, the wealthy patroness tells you. Nearly all the Children of the Glow are here. Sculptors, poets, musicians, and of course, the painters, including the one who started it all. He now gestures a bejeweled hand towards a man lounging in a far corner of the room. A young woman, draped in Romani shawl, is leaning against his shoulder. That is him there with his muse, the Luminous Miss Sparks. The wealthy patroness lowers her voice conspiratorially. They say she's the illegitimate daughter of an earl. So we can chat with the wealthy patroness. She seems to know a great deal about the Children of the Glow. We can talk to the avant-garde painter. As leader of the movement, he will surely know the most about the artists and their philosophy. Or we can talk to the Luminous Miss Sparks. An artist's muse sees all, does she not? Let's chat with the patroness. The wealthy patroness ushers you to a somber corner of the room behind a Chinese screen. There, atop an intricately carved console table, stands a small bronze statue. I recently commissioned this sculpture of my darling Peekaboo, she says, proudly gesturing towards what appears to be the likeness of a Pekinese dog. Its eyes glow eerily in the dim light. The artists don't like to share their secrets, but I think they must be using a special kind of paint, she continues. As for the poets and musicians, they have other ways to express glow in their work. Come, let me show you. She leads you back towards the bohemians. Now, which one of you would like to recite a poem for our guest? After a short pause, a young woman in a billowy sleeved blouse rises from a cushion on the floor. She approaches the center of the room, but a mop-haired musician has begun tinkling away on the high notes of a baby grand piano. Her arms outstretched, the poetess declaims, "Oh, to be aglow and shimmer, in darkness we do gleam and glimmer. Precious is the inner light that guides us through the lands of night." The poem continues in a similar vein for quite some time. Judging from the loud murmuring around the room, however, few people are still listening. "Marvellous, isn't it? It's an epic poem," the wealthy patroness exclaims. "It'll take her at least an hour to finish, so don't feel obliged to hear it all." Good lord, how long does it go on for? Let's talk to the avant-garde painter. As leader of the movement, you will surely know the most about the artists and their philosophy. The avant-garde painter is not as young as he first seemed from the other side of the room. Wisps of silver hair, partially darkened with boot black, mark his temple with years that cannot number any fewer than 30. After you explain you are writing a piece for the Gazette, the avant-garde painter talks about himself with great faculty. "No doubt you know my previous work. My montages were rather remarked upon, but of course I'm utterly tired of them now I've found my new inspiration." From his lengthy discourse, you learn the avant-garde painter initially made his name with montage moderne, a style he developed that involves reassembling lithographic images clipped from popular magazines. You also learn he is a great disappointment to his father, who is, apparently, most tiresome. But despite your prompting, he reveals nothing particularly useful about the children of the glow, nor their techniques or their philosophy. "And of course my work is inspired by my muse, the Luminous Miss Sparks," he says. "Not only does she model for my paintings, she dabbles a little herself in the decorative arts. Don't you, my love?" Miss Sparks casts her eyes down modestly, but he insists. "Don't be a bore about it, darling. You're very talented." Well, let's speak to the Luminous Miss Sparks. The woman, leaning on the shoulder of the avant-garde painter, has been watching you closely. You now recognize her. She is the nymph from the painting at the butcher's shop exhibition. While she is a little shorter and less beautiful than her portrait suggests, her graceful bearing is striking nonetheless. After some hesitation and some nudging from the avant-garde painter, Miss Sparks agrees to talk, giving you a description of the art and philosophy of the children of the glow. "And so, correct me if I'm wrong, darling, glow is a reaction against those who would have us cling to an outdated sunlight-infused styles and methods that were used by artists before the fall of London." "Dreadful sunlit uplanders," the avant-garde painter interjects. "Such a bore, those old coves." "And of course, we children of the glow came of age after the fall, you see, in a landscape lit by other means," continues the Luminous Miss Sparks, her voice now louder and less hesitant. "Art must rid itself of tired nostalgia. London needs artwork that reflects not how it was, but how it is now. Isn't that right, darling? Isn't that what you're always saying?" The avant-garde painter nods. "Oh, absolutely. I'm always saying that." He leans towards you confidently to add, "He puts things so prettily I daren't interrupt her." Okay, well, let's submit our article to the Gazette. You now know enough to write a passable précis on the subject of this new art movement. A secretary ushers you into the editor's office. Mr. Huffam is seated behind his desk, peering at a printed sheet of newspaper through a magnifying glass. Hearing you enter, he puts the magnifying glass down and rises to greet you. "My new art critic, not a moment too soon. Our printer cannot abide lateness, and I dare not test his patience." Huffam briskly thumps the desk with one hand while reaching towards you across the desk with the other. "Well then, let's have it. You hand him a single sheet of paper, your story about the children of the glow. I trust they gave you something useful, these minstrels of moonlight, or whatever they call themselves. Mr. Huffman's eyes pass quickly over the page. He frowns with interest as he reads your article, the tone of which is rather... It can either be flattering, glow is truly an art style of our times, doubtful, is it a real art move, or merely a pseudo-intellectual pretext for the use of novelty paint. Or we can be neutral. Glow is a bold new vision for London art, but whether or not it will capture the public's imagination remains to be seen. Let's remain neutral, like all good journalists should. London set aglow by new art movement. With their innovative treatment of light, incorporating the use of curiously luminous paint, the children of the glow are sure to delight and surprise with their work. But once the shine of novelty wears off, can the public's interest be sustained? Or is this new aesthetic little more than a flash in the pan? Only time will tell, and in the meantime, this critic will follow their work with interest. Yes, I think that will do nicely, says Huffman with an air of approval. He then reaches over to the wall beside him, pulls a long brass speaking tube towards his mouth, and shouts into it. Chapman, tell Hogarth the arts column is ready for collection. Your article is now successfully submitted. You broached the small matter of compensation for your labours. Ah, yes, of course. Mr. Huffman opens a desk drawer to retrieve a handful of coins and places them on the desk. Before you go, however, there's something I'd like you to see. He hands you a slip of notepaper. Well, let's take the message and your payment and leave. You have acquitted your duties as temporary art critic for the Gazette. The message is unsigned and written in crude block letters. The content is brief. A suggestion that the idea for glow did not originate with the avant-garde painter, but instead from his muse, the luminous Miss Sparks. Intriguing, is it not? Huffman looks at you with a twinkle in his eye. Yes, I can sense that your reporter's instinct is thoroughly piqued. Follow up on this, would you? Good. And with a wave of his hand, Mr. Huffman sends you on your way with a new assignment. So, Huffman has received an anonymous note alleging scandal, and he wants you to look into it. And we've gained 120 pennies. Is the luminous Miss Sparks the true visionary behind the glow? Could the anonymous accusation in the message sent to the Gazette be true? Perhaps the avant-garde painter's muse, the luminous Miss Sparks, is the true originator of the children of the glow art movement. You return that evening to the unceasing salon to investigate. Once again, a butler graciously receives you at the chic residence of the wealthy patroness. She approaches to play hostess. How lovely for you to join us again, she enthuses. Then lowering her voice, she adds, By the by, it was marvellous to read your little piece about the artists in the Gazette. They all pretend not to read the papers, but of course they do. Luminous Miss Sparks is in attendance this evening, she informs you. Sadly, however, the avant-garde painter is absent, being hard at work in his painting studio. Well, let's speak to Miss Sparks, since she is here. If the muse has been wronged, you must be given the opportunity to tell her side of the story. After locating the luminous Miss Sparks among the cushions and smoky haze of the salon, you sit down beside her and draw her into a conversation. Is she the true originator of the children of the glow? Why ever would you think that? She replies, her eyes cast down, her fists clasped around the edges of her shawl. It is black muslin, painted with white roses. Of course, it's flattering that someone might think it was all my idea, but it is simply impossible. I am a muse, a mere helpmeet to a brilliant artist. I dare not aspire to more. She now looks straight into your eyes, as if searching for your reaction. The intensity of her gaze is such that you instinctively break eye contact, and your attention moves to the roses on her shawl. You now notice they are faintly glowing. "Do you like my pelerine?" she says. "I painted it myself. It both celebrates and questions our notions of feminine interiorology." As she raises her shawl to show it to you, you notice red, crescent, moon-shaped marks on her hands. She has been digging her nails into her palms while talking to you. We gained an occurrence, a harsh critic, huh? Well, I can press her using my persuasion. She is clearly struggling to hide something. With the right approach, it might be cajoled out of her. You return to the dimly lit corner of the salon to speak to the luminous Miss Sparks. This time you appeal to her pride, something she has clearly been struggling to hide. She is surely no mere muse, you suggest. Only someone possessed of her depth of insight and breadth of understanding could be the true visionary of this art movement. The luminous Miss Sparks lowers her eyes in an attempt to hide her pleasure. Finally, however, after a sigh of resignation, she leans back into the cushions behind her and begins her confession. "Yes, I suppose keeping up this pretense is quite futile," she says. "The Children of the Glow was indeed my idea, along with many other ideas that my lover claims as his. It must seem quite strange to you, but..." He looks off into the distance, briefly, perhaps into a mirror on the opposite wall. Is it hard to tell? Before looking you straight in the eye. "I can't abide the limelight. I prefer to work in the shadows. Do you see?" So, this Children of the Glow movement was all of her idea. But before we go and visit the avant-garde painter, I think this is a good place for me to end the first episode of the Children of the Glow. Thank you all very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, let me know what you think. Comments are greatly appreciated. Thank you again to the members of the channel. It really does help keep the channel going. Times are tough. It really is helpful, and I hope you know that I appreciate it. But as always, I'll see you next time.